Well, when I thought about what is what's the word I'm looking for, barrier to the growth of the business, it's always the barrier of the leader's growth, personal growth, right? Your business will only grow as big as the personal leaders or the owner's growth is. And
Mm.
so that having that level of awareness over time, what's the kind of leader that I need to become so that my business can grow? Because it's all about mindset and how you approach things and how you lead people and take action. So that's always been more about awareness. And as you become more aware, you become more aware.
Welcome to the Clear Brand Marketing Podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. I'm your host, Alexander. And today I'm talking with Eric Brown. He's the CEO and founder of GO2 Delivery. He's a seasoned professional in the fulfillment, logistics, and delivery industry, having dedicated the past 28 years to the field. For the past decade, he has served as a coach and consultant to numerous startups and companies, with the last 5 years focused on being a lead mentor for a startup accelerator. He's a 6-time Inc. 5000 honoree. He's recognized as a key player in America's fastest growing privately held companies. He embarked on his entrepreneurial journey in 1996 as the founder and CEO of GO2 Delivery, a same-day delivery service. This was followed by the launch of Fulfilltopia in 2009, an e-commerce pick and pack fulfillment center, where he steered operations for 12 years. Most recently, Eric founded Deliver Local, an e-commerce platform enabling restaurants and retail businesses to market and sell their products online, complete with local delivery. Welcome, Eric.
Hey,
So you're busy. You have done a lot. I'm curious just to start with, what is there just like this insatiable drive to do stuff, or tell me about why you've started 3 companies.
well, it started out when I was a courier at a law firm, and kind of looking back, I had uh, quit college to do the Amway business, which didn't work out, and I burned the ships and I defaulted on my student loans, so I couldn't go back to college. So I was a courier at a law firm. I was trying to build Amway at night. That wasn't working out. Being a courier at a law firm for 2.5 years was not going to be my future. So I was like, what can I do? Well, I studied the courier business for 6 months. And one day I just walked up to my employer and said, I'm ready to leave and go out on my own. It was a law firm, and they were very supportive, actually helped me get started by forming the corp. But so that's where I started out at, and wanted to do something different. Um, and so I started the curry business, went on a whim. I didn't have a job when I quit my job, so I got a job as a graphic designer at nighttime, and then it really beat the pavement and the courier business. And then I think just, you don't know what you're doing. You're taking a lot of risk, but at the time, being single and having 5 other roommates, my risk was pretty minimal. Wasn't
Yeah.
married. Yeah. And it's just, you know, just constantly just evolving, and I didn't know, I wanted to be free, of the current constraints of working for somebody else. So that's how I got started. And then I think just as time goes on, you invest more and more into the business, and then you get more committed, and then you take more risks, and you really don't look back, reflecting and saying, what did I have to go through to get to where I am today? You just go through it, and you're not really worried about the past, just worried about the future. So
Yeah. So you said you had a motivator of yours was freedom. What was that like in the first few years? Do you feel like there was freedom, and do you think there is now?
there's definitely a level of freedom now, being 28 years. I think what was motivating me is when I was younger, in like junior high and high school, my parents had a lot of financial issues. Um, and during my high school years, my parents went bankrupt, and we lost everything. So that was definitely a motivator. I didn't want to have to repeat that, and I was
Mm-hmm.
out of my since 17. So just trying to survive, right? And then the survival became better and better as years went on. But that was really my motivator. Um, Not want to have to relive that past. And then really, when you're on your own and you start a business, you're really on your own,
Yeah.
not having a lot of income. So it's a survival mode. So
Yep.
yeah, that was really kind of the motivator. And the more I got invested into the business, the better it got. It kind of evolved the model. So
Yeah. So I'm curious. I know that this financial stability and also freedom are big motivators for a lot of entrepreneurs. How did those elements evolve over the years?
yeah, I think as I had more success, it got a little easier, a little different. My perspective had shifted, and I call it like the peak to peak syndrome. Once you're going on this journey in the valley and you reach the pinnacle of whatever level of success you're at, then you're like, now your belief level goes up, and then you can see the
Hmm.
next peak. That's why I call it the peak to peak syndrome. But to get to the next peak, you go back through another valley and kind of learn something new and evolve and grow to the next level. Um, that's really kind of just kept this series of successes kept me going to keep evolving and growing.
Yeah. So was there a revenue level, or was there like what was the tipping point where you felt like, oh, it was the first time you said I've made it. I have the freedom and the financial stability that I was looking for.
So, funny story, before I answer your question. So, when I was dating my wife, and we're just talking, I was in business about a year, um, and I said, when I reached $500,000, I'm going to sell. Like that was the quan. That was like the big goal,
Hmm.
$500,000. And then I looked back when I reached $500,000, and I was like, I'm not going to sell. I'm going to keep growing. So,
Yeah, just getting
um,
started.
yeah, and then I think is just like with after we got married, then we're living in a condo for 4 years, and we wanted to buy our first house. For me, that was the first time because I really been kind of like not paying myself a lot. My wife was working full time. I wasn't really giving myself a paycheck. It was just kind of taking distributions, and so I had to start making money so that we could afford things in our life, like buy our first home. So that was kind
Hmm.
of a shift in mindset, kind of out of this reality of survival. Um, but I would say once I was making like 100 grand a year. That was kind of a game changer for me,
Hmm.
because for the first 4 years I made like 15, $20,000. It was nothing. It was pittance.
Right.
Um, and then that was probably 7 years in. I started to having more significant income. So
So I mean, what I love about these conversations is just reality. Because I think that there's a lot of folks out there who say things like, here's the secret to make $1 million in 3 months. And so you're saying around year 7 is when you were able to pay yourself over 100 grand.
yeah.
And the company, I'm sure, was making more than that. Was there like a company revenue level that felt like it kind of opened up the possibilities as you were moving forward?
Yeah, my goal when I wanted to join this CEO peer advisory group, and in order to do that, you had to do at least $1 million a year. That was my next kind of pinnacle point like a goal,
Hmm.
and which is 8 in revenue. And I think it took me about 7 years to get to $1 million.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was around that same time I joined this CEO group. But I remember when we reached the $80,000 a month. That was a really big deal, right?
Yeah.
Like that would set you up for success for $1 million. So it was very exciting.
That's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
and I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but most businesses, I don't think ever reach $1 million. Um, what was it like? What was the difference between the pre $1 million experience of business? The difficulties. How hard was it to get there compared to the next milestone? And what would you say was the next milestone?
Probably 3 million was the next milestone,
Okay.
in terms of revenue. I think looking back before the million, it's really just me grinding it out, maybe getting a couple people to help me run the company.
Hmm.
And when you go beyond a million, you're now trying to develop an organization. Is kind of a shift. And I always think about when it was me and a bunch of drivers, right?
Hmm.
I was the manager, I was the CEO, I was everything. I did everything. And then I remember when I hired my first manager, which he's really kind of a frontline supervisor. That was a big deal because I now needed to manage a manager, and the mind shift of that. How do I lead this person? And that was an education of how to lead and manage somebody.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a big shift for me. And then from a leadership aspect and growing the organization, start to leverage my time more effectively. Um, so that was a key point. And then once I got to beyond a million, it was more like building other leaders. Um, so
So that's a big shift from getting started doing a bunch of the work yourself and then having basically one layer in the company is what it sounds like, kind of you and then folks doing the job to crossing that first kind of ceiling of 1 million. And from what I hear, it's a different ball game. Now you're leading leaders and you're developing leaders to go do that. Um, what else would you say was different? Is there a different level of freedom before and after a million, or how do the responsibilities that go with that change?
I really I think when it took a lot longer to get that freedom. Just to kind of give you kind of a concept of time and investment. I think it was the first. It took almost up to 9 years before I had the infrastructure where I didn't have to take phone calls at nights and weekends in the middle of the night because we were
Yeah.
24/7 operation. So I think the true freedom not only came in revenue, but also having staffing to kind of take this transition of role and responsibility of the business. So
Hmm.
it's a time and money kind of element, usually about
Got it.
9 years. Um,
So the freedom wasn't just the revenue; it was the team being able to fill all of those kind of frontline roles.
yeah, it was a game changer.
Hmm.
So I could go to sleep at night and not have to worry about the phone going off in the middle of the night or hopping in the car,
Yeah.
going to do a run in the middle of the night. So
Well, and 9 years I think is also I'm sure much more normal than this kind of make a million in 30 days thing. Um, and I think for those of us entrepreneurs out there, kind of, oh, I can take a breath, you know. I don't know about you, but I always personally feel like I'm behind. I look at my own mistakes and I'm like, oh, we could have been so much further, you know. But then to hear stories like this, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, we're right on track, you know. Um, so you get to this kind of space where you can uh, actually sleep at night. That's awesome, huge game changer. Um, what made you want to start a second company?
so I guess it's just the evolution. That was not the intent. Starting the second company. So in my courier business, I'm always trying to think forward, like what's the next thing, and always trying to mitigate risk.
Hmm.
And in our business, delivering documents and paper was going to be a thing of the past. It was like the time frame when I started the company. There's faxing, and then their emails were coming online, much more prevalent in the technology. So I'm like, what's the thing that I need to move forward to next to kind of diversify,
Hmm.
not risking everything in one kind of vertical of a target client. And it was actually storing things in a warehouse environment, like replacement parts for computer systems and so forth. That was kind of popular in our industry, that people were doing that. So I started in 2003, starting store these replacement parts, and that was actually a delivery in itself. It became a new vertical,
Hmm.
and then 5 years later, into the Great Recession, that vertical had grown quite a bit, and we are doing a lot of business, but be also being very price sensitive. So just kind of kept the theme here is I kept pivoting,
Yeah.
and then and that and so when that they did that pivot, I pivoted because I had the resources into consumer product fulfillment because I had the warehouse environment. I was
Hmm.
picking and packing for these one-off computer parts and making deliveries. Well, why not do the same thing and just ship it? So that was kind of I jumped into that, and that was a whole process of learning. It was in that business for 12 years. Um, and I think, I heard a quote this morning about, being prepared. So when these opportunities come available to you, the preparedness creates these opportunities. And I didn't knowingly at that time in that moment know that I was going to get in the pick, pack, and ship e-commerce fulfillment business.
Hmm.
I just saw an opportunity that I kind of explored where I ran into somebody, told them I had a warehouse. We were picking and packing, and they said, "Hey, I have my son owns this e-commerce business that is really successful. He's looking for a fulfillment provider." I'm like, "Sure." So, so I kind of like went down that rabbit hole, if you will, and kind of explored that avenue, and then had some success with that. And then I just like, kind of kept pursuing that,
Hmm.
and that kind of evolved into a separate company in itself versus a division of my career company. So it kind of was happenstance. So then I was now running two different businesses at that point. So
So, at what point did you realize it was two separate businesses?
I would say probably 3 or 4 years later. So now we're thinking like 2011, 2012.
Hmm.
And I had to hire, of course, going back to what I learned in the courier business, it was all about people and systems and processes. And so I knew that I needed the right kind of systems, software, and I need to have the right kind of people lead that business. And so that was kind of a process in itself, kind of finding the right leader. And then
Yeah.
I became fortunate to hire a key person, and that business began to really grow because they had the experience and the leadership. So that's really the growth became uh, more firm or foundational when I hired the right person in that business. Because to me,
Okay.
the sales was always the easiest thing, but you growing it and keeping it was another factor, you know. So keeping the
This.
people in the business, also keeping the clients happy. So that's the key factor.
Okay. So you said you found sales to be the easiest. So you consider yourself more of like the salesman?
Um, I wouldn't consider myself a salesman. I'm just really passionate about helping people
Hmm.
and creating unique solutions. And then,
Okay. And
and
that
so,
kind of translates into getting some good sales.
yeah, I actually really don't like sales.
Okay.
Yeah, I really don't like marketing, but I know it's a function of growing the business. And
Yeah.
so, I just enjoy meeting people and creating solutions for their problems. So I've had to adapt, into that rhythm of production of sales. So
Yeah. So there's some interesting stuff there. So first, what would you say? You said that you don't really like sales or marketing, but they're functions of growing a business. What would you say are some of those key functions that you've picked up over these basically 3 decades and 3+ companies? What are the key functions of growing a business?
I think is having a service for me for service, excuse me, that is viable in the market, that people want, and then you can go after more people. And then I think the other kind of key factor is I've always built businesses on recurring revenue. So
Hmm.
when you have this relationship, you don't have to keep hunting for the revenue each month. So that's
Right.
another kind of key factor. So our clients would use this month and month over and over again and for years. Our average retention is like 10 years for our courier customers, plus.
Wow.
That made it easy to grow the business in both the courier and the fulfillment business as
Mhm.
well. Um, so
Yeah,
you
that recurring side, that sounds like it makes everything easier.
yeah.
So, how do you approach the sales and marketing side of things?
So when I've done really well, because I've done well and not well at
Hmm.
times, and gone back to well, and then what I've done really well is to kind of identify kind of a key target verticals or industries or markets of an avatar or an industry, and then
Hmm.
kind of hone in on that industry. So that has brought me a lot of success. It gave me some element of focus. And the times that I was trying to mass market to everybody is when I usually got into kind of trouble and went into too many different directions. So,
Okay. So focusing in on a niche, I mean, that's something that I hear a lot. Uh, the the concern generally that I hear is, well, am I going to limit myself? So have you ever kind of maxed out a niche and then expanded into others, or how do you handle that side of focusing down on that?
well, I think about diversification in many different factors. Is diversification in a niche, but maybe in multiple markets, multiple clients, because diversification is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Then also diversification in the types of clients as well. Finding a handful. So I think I always think about how to diversify whatever you do and not have all your eggs in one basket. So obviously, not having one customer too much a large percentage of your business, and not having
Yeah.
all your business in maybe a market. That's how I think through that lens.
So help me. Let's get a little more specific. Help me understand this. So, what's an example of a niche that you've kind of focused in on?
So when I first started the courier business, I was a courier at a law firm.
Mm-hmm.
So, and at that time, uh, the market that was available to the market for courier services was not really professional. So, and I knew legal. So when I started, all I focused on were law firms. And we took, a unique value proposition. At the time, we were the guys with the ties,
Okay.
because the law firms really valued that professionalism. So we over that first 6 or 7 years, we dominated the market in this one geographic market with all these major law firms. We found the solution that had worked and what brought us the most amount of revenue, which was handling all the business for the law firms, and had this model that we developed and just started duplicating with these law firms. So we handled all their work. We outsourced everything to us, and they duplicated that. And we brought in couriers, and we're professional, and then we had systems, and that. So we kind of owned that market because we knew what the lawyers wanted. They wanted fast delivery, going to these courthouses, doing filings, the very last minute type of thing, and then they wanted attention to detail, and then professionalism. So we mastered that, and then the next kind of group that we moved into at the time were I would say the next big one was hospital. We did accounting was another one back then. Those were more driven for documents.
Mm-hmm.
When we got into healthcare, it was a game changer for us, which was really hospital systems. So I actually did my first acquisition after being 4 years in the business. We bought a courier company, a small outfit
Mm-hmm.
that specialized in medical, and that gave us experience in healthcare, and so that put us in the footprint. And then we kind of grew that healthcare space off of that acquisition. So we were able to take that initial acquisition and multiply it 4 or 5 time multiple. Just what we learned from that experience. And I remember it was like 2006, we started to get massive adoption in healthcare and hospital systems in our markets.
So what was the point where you decided, let's expand out of the law firms and into some other spaces?
I think it's just always been my mindset about, obviously, I mean, growing up as a kid, parents having massive financial issues and all that risk and stress, and then going out on my own, starting my business, and had really having no anything to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I never want to be in that position of putting all my eggs in one basket. So I think just that
Okay.
risk mitigation has always been in my DNA. And I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't trying to think being a contrarian thinker. What's next? I'm also very futuristic. So I think between those different things, I'm always thinking about what's ahead, how to mitigate the risk at the same time. So that's maybe the more of a mindset kind of approach, I would say.
Got it. So you are growth oriented, but it sounds like there's this tightrope of, we don't want to get into the space of being so growth oriented that we're selling to everybody, but there is a time for that. So there's this balance between the focus and then also, well, we can't just be the law firm folks forever.
Well, I'll also say in that journey of that 7 to 9 years, I mean, it's not been like this constant growth cycle. Yeah, there's been
Hmm.
these ups and downs, and then
Yeah.
having a few times of like getting the cash flow crunch, and then collections, and then getting really worried and stressed, and the constant reminder of like not wanting to be in that same situation my parents went through. So
Yeah.
lessons learned in that, and then those lessons learned, like, okay, don't want to do that again. So there were a few times, it was like really touch and go where I might go out of business because of cash flow, and then
Hmm.
collections, um, and kind of learning from that. So again,
Yeah.
kept diversifying, and then I know that I was really excited about helping people. Um, and once I kind of maxed out the legal market, then I wanted to go into other markets and kind of max those things out. So.
Yeah. So did you have a plan? Have you tested out going into the medical market before you acquired the company?
So yeah, I would say no.
Okay.
Um, I would just, I try not to overthink some things sometimes back then. Now I'm a little more cautious. And I say about really just testing something, the acquisition, again, it's easy to go back and say there was this grand plan that I had, and it doesn't work that way. That's why being prepared for growth or these opportunities is really kind of key. So I built relationships with other courier company owners as I was growing my business. And this one courier company. He was like, it was a retired guy. He bought the business as something to do outside the military, and then was not having success. And we built a good relationship. And he was like, "Hey, you need to buy my business." Like, no, no, I don't want to do it. So finally, he's like, You're going to buy my business, and here's what you're going to buy it for." I'm like, okay. So
All
it was just
right.
like just kind of stepping into things, again, but I knew they wanted to diversify. I was diversifying outside the legal, more into accounting and documents. So that's what I knew originally. So that was a kind of a risk for me, is acquiring this company, taking on
Yeah.
the risk of having to pay for that and then get your money back. So
So how long were you only focused on the law firms?
I would say, so I bought so I started in 96, and then I bought my first company, I think it was in 2001. There's really the only company, but I bought it at that
Yeah.
time. So it was 2001. So I think for the first 4 years, it was all exclusively law firms. And then I was doing some other ancillary things. And then once I bought the courier company, that really kind of took my time and focus for the next 2 or 3 years to get that integrated and grow that vertical, get started on that. So again, just learning, start
Yeah.
servicing the medical clients. What do they want? What's important to them? And what are the parallels in the legal to the medical, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I asked about the timing because 4 years that's a long time. We live it one day at a time, and so to think, man, you were thinking about growth and diversification, and man, 4 or 5 years in is when it finally really happened. Is what it sounds like. You're doing some kind of testing. Um, that feels long when you're in it.
Well, and I think, year one, you're just like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And I was really fortunate. So, within 4 months of starting my business, I landed a really large law firm.
Mm,
So I had a base of income to work off of. Like, how do I keep doing this? And so for a while, for the first year, it was just me doing all this courier work. I'm like, okay, I can't keep doing this. So then I need to hire some part-time drivers to help give me back some of my time so I can keep
yeah.
doing more of what I just did. So again, bringing in people to replace myself is one of the key principles to keep, leveling up, the effort and time. And so that year one, I think I did year one. I think I did 60 grand, or maybe it
Yeah.
was 30 grand. I think the second year was like 60 grand, because I could duplicate my efforts. And then,
Hmm.
and then I added more law firms, and I had hired this guy who worked. He was a part-time student. I mean, he's a student at Old Dominion, and he's a part-time driver. He's like, "Hey, I've got some frat brothers who'd be interested in driving." I'm like, "Sure." So I ended up hiring all the frat brothers from this fraternity as all my part-time courier dudes. Um, And so then I started adding more and more law firms. And so I think into the third year, I think that's when I got courier software because everything was manual to this point. I think it was the third year I got the courier software. And so I could enter an order, it'd come up with a price, and they would, back then it would page the driver, the job. Like that was a big deal because we were using cell phones, and
Yeah.
actually we had the big two-way radios that you talked to one person, everyone heard. We did
Okay.
that for 4 years. But
Cutting
like
edge.
go back
I
to
love
the
it.
systems, right? So that it really kind of duplicated my efforts by systems, leveraging those systems. And then the fourth year, because I had those, I had a courier, I think the courier manager supervisor do within the 3 or 4 year mark had software. Then I was now prepared to do this acquisition into year four, or year four roughly. So just setting myself up for success is gave me, kept catapulting, to the next level because of leverage. So
So tell me more about that. You mentioned that a couple times, being prepared for an opportunity when it arises. What does it mean to be prepared for that?
well, I think the forward looking, like where are you headed, like
Mm-hmm.
the idea of you keep on heading forward, whatever that means to you, either growth or what revenue or people, um, time, and so really kind of motivated by the growth, not by the income, right?
Okay.
The achievement of the growth, right? And then helping more people. Um, I think you're like, what do I need to do next to get to the next peak to peak, right?
Okay.
And so it just kind of I kept innovating or evolving, and the evolution and the innovation, kept propelling the growth, right? So
Was there, in order to be in a place that you could purchase a company, in that preparation side of things, are we talking about like saving a bunch of money at all times? Are there other things like that where you've got to have, X, Y, or Z in place so that you can take action when the opportunity arises?
I think looking back again, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just happened to be really smart looking back.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of was fortunate. My first deal, I did through seller financing, right? And I didn't know it was seller financing at the time, and the benefit of that. But looking back, I didn't have to go get a loan, right?
Okay.
It was all through seller financing, so that really helped me give me leverage
Yeah.
from.
So you're talking about when you bought the company, it was seller finance. So you were basically just paying monthly. Is that
Yeah,
how it worked?
yeah. I think I gave a small lump sum, and then finance the deal for 3 years, and so
Mm-hmm.
I used the income from really the business to pay for the financing.
That's great. So it was not free, but it was paid for by the revenue from the company that you were
Yeah.
buying.
Yes.
Well, that's a great deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not sitting there with all millions of dollars in the bank waiting for a company to buy. It was just this, you had your eyes up and you were just ready to take action when it came, and then it turned into a good deal. Is that?
Yeah. It could have gone south.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have committed to paying this money. The clients could have like gone away. The
Yeah.
staff could have like said, "Yeah, I'm going to go on my own and steal the clients." Of course, I did things to help mitigate that, but
Yeah.
there was definitely some inherent risk in that. But it worked out well.
Right. Wow. Okay, so we've got a couple companies that you started, and you got married in there. How did that impact family? Like, what is your time when you're starting a company?
So yeah, I think when I met we were dating, my wife and I were dating a year and after I started my business, and then you just find a way to make time. You don't think that you have time, but when you make it a priority, then you always make time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were married a year later after we started dating, and so she full-time job and I had my full-time gig. It definitely shaped maybe how I spent my time for sure. Uh, even though for the first 7 years I worked an ungodly amount of hours,
Yeah.
be totally transparent. It was like at least 70 hours, I would say, consistently. for the first at least 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, probably more. Some weeks it was much more. Definitely in the beginning. So,
And were you doing deliveries at that time?
oh, I was doing everything. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, the after I hired my part-time courier dudes, like the first year, I was still doing deliveries. I had to do deliveries myself. So I was like the person that took the calls, to dispatching to like delivering, and definitely multitasking. I mean, for years I did deliveries while all this was going. And even when I hired my courier manager dude, I still did deliveries just for the cash flow, right? To help keep,
Yeah.
pay myself. So for the income circle that I needed. So
How do you approach cash flow? Do you have like percentages that you try to stick to, or a certain amount of profit, or what's your what's your approach there?
I don't have. We're much larger now. I don't really, to be honest with you, I really don't think of cash flow, only because I have really good people that manage the business.
Mhm.
I do think in terms of accounts receivable, which is an element of cash flow. So I don't think, because there's cash flow analysis, which is,
Yeah.
all I worry about is, when I invoice somebody, how quickly do they pay me?
Okay.
That's kind of an element of cash flow. So I think in terms of accounts receivable, how far past due are these clients, and what percent of that revenue is from a cash flow standpoint. So it's more kind of, it's easier for me to understand. So what's my cash flow in terms of, like, you know, if I've got a certain percentage of my clients that are 60 days past due, that's a problem, because I've
Yeah.
experienced that before, when you have a lot of money out there and you're having to pay people every 2 weeks. You're really putting up a lot of cash. So, like, well, you've learned from that. Well, people need to pay me faster. So then I changed my billing cycles. Instead of monthly, they went down to biweekly. Now we invoice every week. So
Hmm.
that really helped our cash flow in terms of, like, how we're running my business. So
So that makes sense. So if your pricing is good, and you know that everything's going to be covered, um, it sounds like you've selected this one metric to focus on for simplicity, and you know that if that one metric is good, then the business is fine.
yeah. Now I will say, business owners, uh, even when you hire the bookkeeper or the accountant that's doing your collections, doesn't mean that it's going to get collected, right? Um, and so had some really hard lessons that I've had to repeat a few times. So now I get a report every week where we are on our collections, and then also every week with my key we do that together. So I
Mhm.
have two touch points. We review that to kind of keep that level of accountability. Um, so I think that's, and also just being, kind of present in your business, knowing where your cash is at all times. And the other factor is, we also think of what's called quick ratio. Um, is so I guess I'm answering your question without knowing I'm answering your original question.
Mhm.
Is we do track our quick, shows how much cash we have on hand at one time. And I think if you're under one, it's a problem. You at least want to be at one. Our goal is 1.2. That shows how much
So describe this quick ratio to me.
you're going to get into the nitty gritty. So it's a measuring how much cash. I mean, I'm not the accountant or the finance person, so it's about how much cash you have coming in that's in the bank.
Okay.
And how quickly you're turning over that cash, essentially. And so that when you have that ratio point two, it's anything above one is good. 1.2 or higher is much better. And so if you're at, I think two, you really have a whole lot of cash on hand, which can be actually having too much cash and not using it for other investments or other reinvestment in the business.
Okay. I missed a little bit of that. It sounds like there's some kind of notification, little ding going off. So I heard that the part of the equation is um the cash that's coming in that's in the bank, and then you're dividing that by, say, the what you're dividing it by.
Yeah, I don't know the exact. I don't want to say. You
Okay.
just look up quick. Yeah, I like Google's great. Look
Yeah.
up, yeah, Google quick ratio.
Quick ratio. Okay.
Yeah.
So typically what I'm hearing you say is one is acceptable, but you want to shoot for a 1.2.
Yeah. A minimum our goal is 1.2.
Okay.
So if you have a negative event, you have active cash on hand. Obviously, 1.5 is fantastic. So
Yeah. So you've got these couple metrics here. We've got the how far behind are people who owe you money, and then you've got this quick ratio. Do you have any other metrics that you found are some of those things that you check weekly just to make sure the business is doing good?
I would say we also track our weekly sales. That's kind of a core thing is we knowing where your sales happen. It's a more of a real time thing, obviously. So you want to know, not having to wait a whole month to know something that is potentially wrong.
Hmm.
And so we look at it week over week, and then we compare over last year as well. So just
Okay.
what's the growth, what's the trend? Because sometimes if you even because you have a down week doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Because maybe there's a seasonality to your business, which there is with ours.
Hmm.
So maybe seasonally that you know that you're going to go down. So if you have a dip, maybe it's higher than it was last year, but the dip's okay based off of trend. So
Okay. So week over week sales, and we're not talking about closed deals. We're talking about like incoming revenue.
revenue, correct? Yeah.
Okay. And what do you do for that seasonality of the business? Is there anything that you do to kind of prep for or handle the lower parts of the season?
So yeah, well, yes and no. It depends on the business. So in the my courier business, my direct expenses are variable. So as we have more deliveries, our direct expense goes up or down respectively. So we're not as worried about the dips. The
Okay.
other kind of factor in that is what we need to have X amount of revenue for our break even. So if we have, we go at a break even or below, that's a problem. It means you're taking money out of the business or cash to
Hmm.
fund operations. So knowing your break even point is key. Um, that's another kind of key component. And then we will look at that on a monthly basis. Fortunately, we know that our revenue is high enough consistently. We're not worried about the break even because we're constantly hitting our targets on our profitability goal. So.
So as long as you stay above that break even, the seasonality is not a big deal because your costs go down with the revenue.
Yeah, there's variability, that can happen. Maybe there's two or maybe three pay cycles in a month, right? So
Hmm.
if you're looking at a month snapshot, you're going to spend more money on payroll one month than other, depending on what time of year. So that's some variability or seasonality to that. Summertime for us is people go on vacation, so our sales kind of slow down during the summertime a little bit.
Hmm.
Uh, But if you have enough cash on hand, and then if you're still making money, you're adding to your cash or your profits month over a month. You actually want to be building that over time versus having one month you're in the negative, one month you're in the positive. You want to have every month that's positive. If you have any months that are negative, then that's a problem, right? So
Yeah.
you may be profitable throughout the year, but if you have like this negative and positive thing, and taking a loss one month and profit the next, there's probably something in your business you need to kind of change.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, you said that in your bio that you coach uh, businesses in Accelerator. So let's just go down that path for a second. So what if you are talking to somebody who they have that positive and negative and it's not a consistently positive, you just said something's gonna have to change. So how walk us down that how do you determine what needs to change there?
I think it all when I coach companies or in startups, it always comes down to really some basic fundamentals. What business are you in? Who's going to buy your product, and how much margin do you need to have in the product to make money?
Hmm.
And I think of like what's your gross profit versus your net profit, because your gross profit is you're taking all your direct expenses, and if you don't have your gross profit percent in line, no, everything else is going to be out of whack. So what is your industry net? I mean, your industry gross profit need to be looking at your direct expenses. If your direct expenses are too high, you need to work on that. And so then also you look at the target market or prospect. What is the market willing to buy your service for, and what kind of value, unique value are you offering to charge either at par or higher with your
Hmm.
competition? That's why I sort of think about that. How do you differentiate yourselves? So
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's some basic business stuff. What you mentioned earlier, you got to have something good to sell, and that makes all of the sales easier. And so then this kind of piggybacks on that. Well, you got to make sure you have a margin. So to find the industry margins, are you just telling the folks you're coaching to go to Google and just see if they can discover that?
yeah, they're I can't remember the name of the there's a couple of different uh, websites that you can go to your CPA or your banker, by the way. They can
Hmm.
give this to you for free. But they're industry trends based off in whatever your industry is, what should your gross or net profit be? And they'll take snapshots of other companies of your similar size, because this is
Okay.
public data. uh, but you want to get what are the industry trends off for your business, for your gross profit. You can actually look at your expenses. If you like, how much do you typically spend on marketing, how much you spend on operations. You want to kind of know that.
Yeah. Okay. So free, I mean, and that's, I love using the people that are going to know this stuff. I mean, and that's what's kind of great about being in a marketing agency is we can kind of do that for our clients, where we're able to say, here's the trends that we're seeing, here's what's worked with other folks. And so you're leveraging that same kind of thing with accountants and bankers, where they're in those numbers all the time.
Yeah,
They're
I
seeing that.
will say another word of caution.
Hmm.
Having a relationship with a CPA, a good CPA, a banker, is really important. But knowing what to ask is equally as important, because they won't willingly just offer this information. Um, I was involved in an accelerator myself,
Hmm.
and I learned this through an accelerator. So you've got to learn to what to ask. So you can if you ask the question, you get the information that you want. They're not going to willingly give you that information typically. So you want to know what does success typically look like for your industry. I think that also having relationships with other like-minded business owners in your industry is equally as important to kind of sharing information. So
Yeah, you'd mentioned that you built these relationships with other courier service owners. How have you found how open have you found other business owners are to sharing some of that core info?
I think very. I think as long as you're not in a competitive situation. So,
Mhm.
like in our industry, the courier industry, there are these trade associations where there's courier commanders in other states or other markets that we're not direct competitors, but they're very willing and open to share. And then I think if you get into other peer advisory groups that maybe not in your industry, but maybe give you some basic financial knowledge, things that running a business generally you should be thinking about as well.
All right. Uh, Walk me through some of this accelerator stuff. You said you went through an accelerator yourself, and now you coach in one. So you must have found it valuable. What was some of the value you found when you went through it?
I think I went through the Goldman Sachs Babson 10K program, um, and I think they just brought me through. I've already been in business, I think 9 years at that point, maybe 10, maybe a little longer. But they went through like the whole aspects of owning a business, marketing, sales, finance, and they kind of went a little deeper in the things that you should be thinking through,
Mhm.
but more so from a diagnostic or implementation perspective. And that's where we learned these speakers or specialists came in to kind of teach us. So I think that was really insightful. And so like these in now being a mentor for an accelerator, having sharing those insights with the startups and businesses that I coach and mentor as well is just sharing information. Another kind of key aspect is personality profiles is another kind of key foundational aspect.
All right.
There's DISC, Myers Briggs. There's a whole bunch out there, but not only from the operations and selling and marketing of business is important, but equally is knowing who you are in terms of awareness of your skill set, your motivators, your behaviors, especially for your people as well. As you bring on people, like like I love growing businesses, but you don't want me in, managing finance or, that's just not who I am, or operations. You don't want me because I'm going to either you do a horrible job, pissing people off, people are going to quit because I'm not a manager.
Okay.
I'm not a bad person, but I'm just not my forte. And then remembering to pay bills, and record the events in an accounting software. That's just not in my DNA. So you want to have people who are better with people, leading people. That's a different kind of skill set, or motivators or behaviors. Or someone running accounting, you want someone that it's very different from me. You want a high compliance person in accounting.
Hmm.
I'm not a high compliance person. I'm off to the races to do something different every single day. I'm kind of exaggerating. So
Yeah.
I have a very different personality. So I think it's just when you're building a business, you need people in relationships to help you grow the business, and finding the right people and the roles that are not like you traditionally are really valuable and important as well.
So if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like this is something to grow into. At the beginning, you were doing everything that needed to get done. Um, how do you approach this personality side of things when you're in that beginning phase?
Well, I think in the beginning phase, you're going to wear a lot of hats. And I think it's exciting, and it can potentially be very stressful depending on what kind of business you're building, and how many people are involved in the business. And so in the beginning, you're really doing everything. But I would say starting knowing when to say, okay, this is a high value or low value opportunity to delegate is really kind of important. Like me doing more deliveries was not going to help my business grow. So I knew I needed to hire somebody to do deliveries. I knew that I needed to get the invoices out on time, which affected my cash flows. In the beginning, I was doing everything. I was invoicing. And so I had to make time to go do invoicing on top of doing deliveries, and then learning how to pay people. So I knew that the it was beneficial to hire someone in accounting or bookkeeping because it was not my highest um, experience or value to the business to grow it. And then again, you learn. I hired
Mhm.
a bookkeeper. I'm like, hey, you've got a body temperature of 98.6, and you smile. You seem great. Your resume looks good. Can you start tomorrow? And
Yeah.
then you're like, great. Here's QuickBooks. Go for it. And then to well, that worked okay, but you learn that was probably the best way to hire somebody. And so, as a leader, you need to learn how to find the right people and the right fit. Um, that just takes time and experience, to go through. You're going to make mistakes, but I think looking back is okay. If you're going to hire a bookkeeper or an accountant for your business, just know what is the right personality profile for that. That alone will get you 80% there when you're
Mhm.
interviewing people, right? Not 100%, but 80% there. So again, just trying to think through mitigating risk.
Yeah. So you're using it in a couple ways. You're using it, one, to know, have that self awareness to know this is not something I'm good at, not something I should be doing. I don't have the personality type for it, even if I can do it. So we're going to hire somebody there, as you have those opportunities to hire, especially in the early times, but even now. But then you're also able to use this approach to personality in the hiring process and make sure that the person you're hiring has a good fit there. So are certain ways that you do that? Are there certain personality tests that you use more than others?
Now, I will say, the caveat is from an HR perspective, you can't use these to make decisions. But I'm
Yeah.
just be honest with you, I use them to make decisions.
Okay.
There's kind of a fine line, and the bigger you are as a company, it becomes kind of a higher risk threshold.
Yeah.
So just to be totally transparent, but in the beginning, I use them to help after talking to somebody, kind of vet them out after talking to them. Is this
Okay.
a good candidate to go to the next level? But over time, you learn by knowing people's personality just by talking to them, how they show up, how they communicate. So I will say that. Um, but we used DISC, which is one of the more common ones. It's better for the work environment, I think.
Okay.
And the other one we use is Strengths Finder. You find the person's top 5 strengths. Those are the two that we've had the most success with.
Okay. Yeah, we had experimented with Colby a couple of years ago. That one you're allowed to use in the interview process. It's the only one. I don't know how they got granted that exception or permission. Um, and I don't know if I was using it wrong, but I kept hiring people who the Colby said that they would be good for the job, and then it didn't fit. And then the people who really worked out were the folks who that hadn't said that they would be a good fit there. So maybe it was the way that I was using it, but it's different from the discs and the disc and strength finders, which those seem to be. I mean, it's a lot of self clarity as well. So even if you're using it and you're kind of able to read this person and kind of fairly accurately guess it where they are, they might not have that self awareness. How often do you retake personality tests, or do you just kind of have yours in mind and you're like, this is it?
Me personally, I'm always about self-improvement and learning. So I'll take mine every so often, every 5-10 years, because
Okay.
it won't change a whole lot that quickly. But over time, as you evolve and grow as a leader, it will change somewhat. Like my disc, it doesn't really change a lot, but my strengths do. Um, I think
Really?
I'm hardwired, and like the disc, there's the DISC, and if you're
Okay.
the DI, you have a higher energy, and you're more outwardly focused kind of thing, and then the S and C, you're more inwardly focused. And I always call the D is drive, determination, I is influence, S is more steady, and C is more consistent or compliance. And
Okay.
so people usually have a predisposition of the left or the right. I'm more on the left. So I'm pretty much all on the left, the D and the I.
Mm.
Um, and I'm not steady and consistent or compliant. So I definitely want to
Yeah.
have, finance people that are steady and consistent and compliant. And so we're just different personalities. My, my VP of operations is a high D and a high C. So he's on both ends of the spectrum. So he's high
Yeah.
compliance and high drive. So, which is really good for a leader, an operational leader, I think. And then I think just, another thing I'll say is, as you grow your business, you probably want to have other people doing the hiring for you, right? If you have the right leaders, they have the better experience and skill set for that than maybe the visionary leader who's a D or an I kind of strength.
Hmm.
So
So do you have everybody take these after they get hired?
we did. I don't know what we do now, because
Okay.
my VP of operations and my VP of admin handle that. So like that's again out of mind, out of sight. They're better at it. Like that's their role now, because I'm on the level when as you build your business. Began. I hired my first manager. I needed to learn how to manage my first manager. Then you hire manager to manage other managers or supervisors, which is a kind of a different skill set in leadership. And then you hire a leader who you add another kind of level. And so there's different levels of leadership as an owner of a company. And so I know that I do best when I work with leaders, not managers or supervisors. So
Mm.
so I know that if I have really good leaders, I let them lead. I don't manage them, right? And they lead their respective parts of their operations. I'll help contribute as a participant in their journey, what they're doing, by maybe be a sounding board or giving them the resources. But I'm not telling my VP of Ops who to hire, how to hire, unless it's a key position. I will be involved in that, but he's better building teams than I am. Anytime I get involved, I screw things up. So I'm like, okay, you're good at that. My VP of finance and admin, they're good at that. Okay, you focus on what you do best, and I'll focus on what I do best. So
Yeah. So part of what I'm hearing here is you're hiring folks who are better than you at their jobs. how do you approach that?
That's a really good question. That's a deeper question than you might think. I think when something is new, um, I think I want to be involved. I want to learn how what's going on that the area of concern. Like I'm good at sales. I'm not good at marketing, funny enough, but I know enough that what I need to know about marketing. I know enough to know about sales. There are people that are better at sales and marketing than I am. I know that.
Hmm.
But we've talked a lot about marketing. I know that need to know enough about marketing at the level I'm at so that I can bring in the right kind of leaders to manage the marketing. So I'm in this kind of transition of the level of marketing that I want to get engaged in is a different level than I've been in the past. So
Okay.
I get to personally, I get to this point where I soak it all in and I synthesize the information. I know enough, not all. I know enough that what I need to know and what I don't need to know, and I know enough when I need to hire someone to become better than I am. So I'm kind of in that place of uh, this journey in marketing that I need to hire a VP of marketing at some point soon
Hmm.
because so
So, this, I mean, this is a difficult task here. If you're hiring somebody who's doing a job that you are good at, you know exactly what to look for in that hiring process. So you're kind of soaking things up, and it sounds like you just need to know enough so that you can kind of have the direction that they're going to go and see that's the direction that we want to go in. And I might not understand all of the next steps, but you're able to kind of recognize, okay, that person can at least go in the right direction. Or is there, more nuance there?
I think there's a bit of nuance, a little bit of intuition. I'll give you an example. So I think when you learn how to hire people to say manage an operation or an area of concern, and you're going to go through some experiences where you make a lot of mistakes in that, but you get better by learning.
Hmm.
And so when I've hired many of operation folks, right, I've learned. And then when they left, was it better or worse after they left?
Okay.
So, but sometimes it was actually worse after that because they did a good job in operations and maybe I didn't value what they were doing at the time as a leader because it's equally as important. And so you become more adept and intuitive about what to look for and then how to hire for that position. And so at the same time, I had a lot of experiences in operations because I was doing it myself that I was familiar with the business in itself, what the business needed. So it's kind of a two-hand aspect of making some mistakes and learning from them. And we're key. I think I look back at things that I'm not good at, but I'm doing, is knowing when to hand it off to the right person, and but having that intimate operational knowledge of whatever I'm working on or looking to develop. I've been doing marketing for over 20 years, and the level of marketing that I want to go to next is more of an inbound marketing approach at scale for a really finite market, which is a different way than mass marketing. Um, and so that it's different kind of marketing. So there's a learning curve of knowing what to look for and have, and then knowing what kind of people you need to really run that, so they can make the decisions to manage that and lead that process. So, and I think you've got to make mistakes on some level. And the other key factor is sometimes people don't make mistakes fast enough.
Mm.
Um, and because if you make mistakes over a long period of time, it took you that long to benefit from those mistakes and make better decisions. So, I do better when I make lots of mistakes really quickly because it's more concentrated learning versus elongating over time. Like I've made a lot of mistakes in marketing over a period of years, but when I'm like just iterate and do it a little faster, you get there. I think that you taking that time compression you have make quicker decisions on how to fix it and move forward faster.
So you're making, so I mean, this is gold here. So we're in this space where you're trying to level up, making more mistakes faster, pivoting. And so if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like there's this, I mean, you clearly have this level of acceptance around mistakes are necessary. So we're not just trying to hit the bullseye every time. You're just trying to get closer with each iteration. So when you're doing this, it sounds like you're measuring certain results to how do you know that your mistakes are moving you in the right direction?
So I think there's a mindset here that you have to have. Uh, so there, I've heard the expression there's gap and gain. If you there's another expression is things happen for you, not to you.
Okay.
So when things happen wrong or not the way you anticipated or wanted, it's actually a gift. That in that moment, it's wisdom. And so take your energy of that gift and move it forward versus looking back what went wrong. Take what you learn and using the energy to leverage that new information. So having that framework of it's a gift, everything has happened for you, changes the mindset around the mistakes, and you keep pivoting in a positive energy. So I think that's really important. But that I think that sometimes you have to have the mistakes for those learning moments. That's how you're going to learn. Again, what worked well, what didn't. It's almost like an A/B testing type of scenario. If you think in terms of like marketing, it's A/B testing, and so I think that's kind of a key component. And then you value, I think, in those decisions and those mistakes, the people that you're working with, the partnership and the communication is really important because that also can change the view of the framework of how what you're doing. If you have this level of appreciation for people, that partnership will be a game changer versus like you did this wrong, this didn't work. That's not going to get you anywhere because you have to look at yourself in the mirror. Why is this not working? It's not other people's fault. It's your fault, right? And I say fault. I mean, but you look in the mirror that you're in the position you're in because of your actions and your attitude. And so you want to work with people and using their gifts to help your gifts. And so that's I call the amplification of energy. So it's never going to be perfect, and it shouldn't be. So.
Yeah. So I mean, just kind of making this. This is huge, especially in that growing phase. I mean, you're always growing, but one thing I've been seeing more and more recommended is never just hire one salesperson. Especially when you're at that phase, you're hiring your first. Hire two, because if they both fail, it's your fault. If one of them outperforms the other significantly, then you can get rid of the low performer and replace them. But it gives you this space where you can have that check. If you just hire one, you don't know what the problem is. Did I train them poorly? Is it the person who isn't as good as I had thought they were? Is it, there's just too many factors. So there's these little ways that you are able to make those mistakes and also kind of see, have a more clear picture of what's going on so that you can also be learning from it. So you're talking about A/B testing, and I think that's perfect.
I mean, I have an example of that. So, we've had salespeople, and I think there's kind of a balance. So, whatever the situation is, hiring salespeople or whatever it is you have to put a time frame on that, right? You can't just because I've done it where I've had the salesperson, we had a great relationship, wasn't performing, and kept them on for way longer than they should have been, right? So how long does it take to figure out whether this is going to work or not? I think you have to put some guardrails on that, and you have to kind of look at what is the outcome you're looking for, and how do you measure that? And so you love the people, but not so the behaviors or the actions that they may or may not be doing.
Yeah.
And so, like with the salesperson, I think you know within about 4 months, and then if you're transparent with them on this journey of being a salesperson up front, it makes it easy to kind of have conversations with them. This is because you want them to know this is working or not working along the way, versus
Mhm.
being this surprise thing like you're fired, like why? Um, but yeah, so I put some guardrails on that. So you don't want to wait a year to figure out if it's going to work or not, because there's going to be a level. I mean, with sales, it could be a low level of excuses, and if you have the dialogue, what's not working, and you have the expectation of what you are looking for, you're not going to waste your time and effort. You're going to learn from it faster versus waiting a year or 2 years before you make the decision when you need to make a change with people, because that's a common thing that entrepreneurs do. They hold on to people a lot longer than they should when they know they need to fire people and move on. Um, so, and at the same time, the flip side of that is knowing when to recognize good work and then say thank you and you know and, you can recognize them.
How do you, when you're just hiring the first person for a role, how do you initially develop those metrics that you're going to be communicating and then holding this person to?
So in terms of people, I think you want to write a job description, and that
Mhm.
may sound oversimplified, but you really want to know what are like the top 5 things you want them to do. Maybe even three is even better. And then what are the skills, competencies, and behaviors of those top 3 to 5 things that you want them to handle? And so you spend a little time thinking about it. Of course, with AI and the internet, there's plenty of places to find this information. And then when you have this job description, what are the core things you want them to do? You want to create questions around those top 3 to 5 things, and really questions about tell me a time when you really about things around their experience versus yes or no questions, because those are not helpful. But I think really kind of getting foundational. What are you looking for? What are the outcomes? And then ask them questions about how they succeeded or did not succeed in those things. That's kind of a key point when it comes to hire people. Um, and having a few key, metrics to kind of track the performance, and then not overly too many, but I think a few key metrics are important.
Okay. One of the things I've picked up in this conversation is it sounds like you have a pretty long-term mindset. Earlier, when I asked about how often you retake the personality test, you said every 5 to 10 years. Um, has that been there from the beginning, where you're kind of thinking in these long stretches, or has that developed? I mean, you've been in business for almost 3 decades, which is quite the achievement. Did that change over the years, or was that there from the beginning?
Well, when I thought about what is what's what I'm looking for, barrier to the growth of the business, it's always the barrier of the leader's growth, personal growth, right? Your business will only grow as big as the personal leaders or the owner's growth is. And
Mm-hmm.
so that having that level of awareness over time, what's the kind of leader that I need to become so that my business can grow? Because it's all about mindset and how you approach things and how you lead people and take action. So that's always been more about awareness. And as you become more aware, you become more aware. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
So, what are some of the differences that you found in? No, I'm gonna ask a different question first. What does it take? You're saying that basically what I'm hearing you say is that the business is gonna be limited by the capabilities of the owner, so they have to be able to grow so that the business can grow. What are some of the things that you've learned as you've been in business for a long time and grown your company significantly larger than you started? What were some of those shifts that had to happen in you?
so I think it was I don't know 10 years ago, when the book by Simon Sinek, Start with Why, came out. That was a game changer for me. When I read that book, it really reframed my whole world. Like, I've always been passionate and purposeful about something in the business. It was always about growth, right? What's the next, peak or pinnacle? It was more about like a more competitive nature in the beginning, and how, what's the next step on the revenue cycle. And then when you started to kind of hone in about really what are you about and what is your company's really about. Um, and it had different versions of this over time, but really wanting to make a bigger impact on people and the planet. And then reading that book, Start with Why, reframe my mind about how I approach things. And it became more personally and more about what is my passion, what's my purpose or my why. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And I don't think you ever finalize that. I think it's always more of an evolution of that. And so that put me on this path of why am I here? What's my purpose, both personally and in my company? And there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And so then it makes you think about what you're doing in your business. I will say like your unique value proposition. And so there's a connection to you and your company, like what your purpose is. If all we're doing were to make money, that doesn't drive me. Making money never has driven me to do the next thing or make it better. So I've always had a higher purpose of like, why am I here and what am I doing? That answers your question.
Yeah. So it sounds like that higher purpose was a big shift for you that allowed you to think differently. It takes a different, I mean, you can tell me here, but it sounds like it takes a different type of leadership at the size you're at now than to start the company. And you kind of had to evolve into that. And if I'm hearing you right, you're saying that developing that why is part of what allowed you to do that.
Yeah, and I also think, it's as you grow, I've always been a big believer in having around other peers and then mentors that are at a place beyond where I'm at. It helps expand my horizons or my mindset around how things are and where they can be. That's always been a big driver for me. But I look back, like, for about 3 or 4 years ago, like, you reach some level of success, and then you have your basics covered, you're making income, you have maybe more time. Then you start to really think about beyond just making money, beyond growing the business to whatever. It's like more like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What's the ultimate legacy or impact you want to make on this world. and that took a process. And I think what I came away with, beyond making the money, I can't continue with want to healing the planet, because I started to think through, like, the future generations, my kids. I want to have this world be a better place for my kids. That's really my motivation, is making a better place for my kids and future generations. So then it's like, well, then how do I do that? And so that's where we began this journey of rethinking our approach and purpose in the business.
And that led to a rebrand. So were you're a carbon neutral courier now? Was that something that you were doing earlier, before you were really making that a big part of the brand, or did that start recently?
No, I mean, we rebranded a year ago, but I knew about 3 years ago what my purpose was. I didn't know how to bring it to fruition. It took some thoughts and some trials and some, taking different approaches. But I said to myself, well, if I want to heal the planet and make the place a better world, how do I do that? Mm-hmm. And I kind of went back to what I was passionate about as a kid. It all comes back to when you're a kid, you're looking back to your childhood. And I had this fascination about marine biology and marine life. I love marine life, and kind of coming back to that. And so, being in the courier business, we are having a negative effect, because we're driving these vehicles, creating all this carbon dioxide. And so, And I thought, well, the reason why we have climate change, whatever political spectrum you're on, doesn't really matter. But when you have climate change, what is causing that? And so carbon dioxide is a key driver of that. I can get much deeper in that another time. But and so we were driving, like, well, obviously the linear progression of what we're doing as a courier company, if we can become carbon neutral, make the world better, we can help participate on reducing our impact on the planet. So that's very kind of linear. So then I
Yeah.
think about, like, really what's the next step going beyond the net, going beyond net zero is what is I call it, is like how do we make a lasting impact versus just staying at par. So we really want to take things like going beyond just that. And so when you think about, what we want to do is help restore marine ecosystems. It's one of my love and passion for that, but it's also one of the best ways to sequester CO2 is restoring the ecosystems that sequester CO2. But also it's going beyond just taking care of what we're doing. Obviously we're also
Mhm.
doing some other things with EVs and hybrids and solar panels as well. But again, we're trying to make this planet better for future generations. And so that's my personal passion. Like when we are doing the rebrand, that wasn't the passion of my team and my company. It's my passion. And so when we did the rebrand, I was how to bring my passions into my business. And so that was kind of a process of this rebrand, bring my personal passions into my business, which now I feel like I'm more in alignment with my company,
Mhm.
because it's I'm excited about healing the planet, and also telling people about that and helping other companies have that lasting impact as well. Now, that's not a driving factor for using a courier service, but it definitely it's maybe a part of that. So
So you still have to be solving the problem. Is what I hear you saying. Of we will deliver the stuff, you know, and that's what folks are looking for. You've got to do it at a good price, but maybe this is kind of. I guess if I'm hearing you right, it kind of doesn't matter if your customers care. You're really just like, I got to be in alignment with my own company.
yeah. Like I think for the clients that hear this and see this and value it, they're like, oh, that's nice, that's great, but that's not why they're using the service, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
yeah, and I think you have to have a really good service, and I think that being the best, creating the best value proposition from a linear perspective is really important, but also from a nonlinear perspective, knowing that by doing business with us, you're having a lasting impact. But we're doing something that like we're investing in projects around the world, like in other countries, to help restore not only the ecosystems, but people that have livelihoods around those ecosystems as well. So it's more sustainable in itself, more like a regenerative process. So when when you're using us to do your deliveries, you're having more of a net impact, other than, hey, we handle your delivery. You're also helping fund these projects in the world to make a lasting impact. So I think it's like that excites me. But
Yeah. Well, and that's huge. If that's going to encourage you to grow and maintain profits so that you can have more money to invest in these projects, I mean, everybody wins. You get to serve more people with the services that are better than your competitors. You then also get to employ more people. This is one of my biggest motivators, is to create a workspace that people look forward to going to work at. And so for me, a lot of the motivation for growth is every person we hire is potentially a person who hated their job and now they like their job, right? And we have you spend a lot of time at work, and so that kind of pushes me. But whatever that motivator is, everybody's going to end up winning if you're actually doing a good job at the stuff that you do. So I mean, I love that, and finding that personal alignment is so important for owners. You don't want to be, like you said earlier, you started the company for some freedom and some financial stability, and that's going to help you achieve those things.
Yeah, no, I also think that it's like going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you reach a certain point in your life, that motivation to do to grow and evolve. It's got to be something more impactful than making a buck, and I think
Yeah.
that will drive the greater good. I think that's what, knowing what that is. I
Mhm.
think I would impart to any kind of other entrepreneur out there is like, what is your higher purpose that will
Yeah.
drive your ultimate passions and happiness and fulfillment. But at the same time, you have to have that foundation of success, and what's going to pay the bills, right? And what's going to provide for your future, for your retirement and your so that you can take time and energy for your ultimate passion project. So you have to have some level of success to give you that foundation. That's really important.
Yeah, and I think when you're at that first stage and you're worried about whether or not you're able to cover the mortgage, maybe you can't think about what's the what's the purpose. You're like, I just got to put food on the table. But as you reach that level of success, it's what I'm hearing you say is it's not great to just hang out with the put food on the table. You go up the hierarchy of needs. So let's look out. What can we contribute now, and how do we make the world better? So the something else I'm curious about here is you're talking about this kind of capabilities of the owner and growing into the next stage of the role. I think a lot of the advice out there is for the folks in that founder mode is what they call it. What are your thoughts on a person who might? I'm kind of looking at this from the opposite perspective. What about the folks who might be better at the stage that you're in than they are at the founding stage? How do they make it through the founding stage, knowing that, man, where you're at, that the managing leaders, the leading leaders, is really the dream? How do they actually get there if the founding stage isn't necessarily their personality or their skill set?
Well, I will say if oftentimes you'll find somebody who's been in a professional career looking to make a switch into entrepreneurship, starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have a level of skill set that I didn't necessarily have because I was 24. But also think about if you want to start a business, being really mindful, spending some time on the front end, um, knowing what you want, how to get there, and then be looking at your funding aspects. And I would say it's probably, if you want to be in a certain kind of industry, I would say an acquisition might be a great entry point to buying
Okay.
something that already has a team to kind of bypass those first few levels. Um, so that would say that would be kind of a key point to answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you find the funding? Do you go through SBA or to do funding, or do you do seller financing? But I would start learning how to maybe buy a business, but spending time on the business that, vetting that out. What do you want? And why do you want that? If you want this kind of business, and I think it also, if you're a skill set in terms of a technician, you worked in some kind of career path and you want to take this knowledge you've gained and that it's into a business. So you may know the base, you have maybe base level knowledge of the business itself, but you now want to do it for yourself or for somebody else. You know, get really smart about where to buy those businesses and how much to pay for them, and what's going to cost, over that time frame. So
That makes a lot of sense. I mean that, and if you're starting off in that founder space, using that personality, your own personality to hire the next person, but yeah, acquiring would make a lot of sense for the person who's like, yeah, I'm ready for the next level there. Well, we had talked about maybe getting into the family space. Any thoughts on how you approach kind of the business with the family, like that work-life balance?
yeah, I think this has always been a challenge for me, or a tough one, to be honest with you. It's like growing up as a kid, my father worked all the time. My dad owned a business. My mom worked in the business. I was the latchkey kid, and I'm like, I want to be present for my kids, So that's, I want to be more aware, help them grow, and I am more present than when my parents were around. When I was a kid, but it's always top of mind, and I think that where I am today in my business, I can afford to be home more often for the kids or take them to school or be more involved. I always say that I want more. Um, so I think the balance of that, my wife works, I work. Yeah, I'm probably not the perfect, ideal kind of story around that, but I think it's just, making time and having time. I do work from home a lot more than I did before, so that I'm around the kids more often. We eat dinner at home. I think that was always one thing for me. Growing up, we didn't eat dinner a lot. When I was really young, but as I got older, we didn't eat dinner as a family, which is, that stressed me out. So we eat dinner together as a family almost every night. So that's important to me, is like coming back to break bread together, catch up with each other. And then, of course, having two young kids and trying to make time to have the date night with the wife on a regular basis, that's always the struggle and challenge. But we've created this life together where um, my wife does what she loves. She was a school teacher. She works for a nonprofit. She can work, doesn't have to work. And so she's really passionate about what she does. And so creating this life where we're both doing things that we're really enjoying and passionate about is kind of a different foundation, because my oldest is 11 going on 12. When I was 11 or 12, it was chaos in the house. My parents were stressed about money. They worked more than full time in the business. I was kind of home by myself a lot of the time. So yeah, I feel like I've made some progress towards having a different life for our kids and family. So
And I love that. And my wife and I have talked about doing dinners as well. It's just such a simple way to make sure that you're there. My family really valued having dinner together when I was growing up, and we've wanted to continue that, and that's a great one. Out of curiosity, how often do you go on dates with your wife?
So we have the standing appointment, and I would call this necessarily a date, but every Wednesday there's a group of friends, couples, that we have this thing called DJ trivia. So it's like this trivia game. So we've been doing that for 6-7 years. So that's every Wednesday. That's our kind of just my wife and I go out, hang with other couples, and I'd say we probably have a date night once or twice a month beyond that.
Okay.
So typically. And then also we have kind of an I call internal date. Is I like to have time when the kids go to bed, and then we can just hang out together and watch, a movie or whatever kind of binge watching is a TV series. That's always nice time as well. So that's important to me, just to have the alone time. So
so this is also more than I expected when you were talking about how much you want to work. You like to. I love working. But getting specific, it's like, oh, that actually, it's simple, and that sounds like a decent amount of time. That's great. That sounds like a life that any person could really enjoy.
Yeah, I will say it's all, being a typical kind of visionary and entrepreneur. It's like it's this, and this that you're working on at one time. I've got the courier business. I've got a software company that I'm trying to reboot again, get to the next level. Again, hiring the right person to run that. So I've got a leader that I'm trying to develop for that. And then I've got the real estate investment business as well. And then I've got a higher purpose passion project around the sustainability piece that I'm working on. So, I'm working on a lot of different things, but I think what I'm trying to do is work with other people, work through other people to bring these things to life, more. But I'm always, kind of thinking through, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to do more of? And that's just in my personality. I have to kind of keep refining that. It kind of builds up and then contracts again. It's just my journey of being who I am. It's typical as a visionary, so.
Absolutely. So you've got these 3-4 things you're working on. You've got family. You mentioned that you also care a lot about health and longevity. How do you find time? You're also going to the gym, it sounds like.
Right now I've kind of cut back from the gym. I'm trying to exercise more at home through walking and running, and then a little bit of rowing, some strength training. So it's more about time, where.
Yeah.
And then I've been on this journey about diagnostics with tests and then supplementation and then with experts as well to kind of fine tuning that. And then I also, most people today have metabolic health issues.
Mm-hmm.
My mom died of complications of diabetes, so did my grandfather. So, I want to kind of avoid that. So I wear a continued glucose monitor, which is kind of the new up and coming thing, is kind of monitoring all your metrics around metabolic health. And so I want to live a really long time because I want to be around for my kids and their kids, which is part of my passion, is like, I want to be around for my kids. My mom died when she was 63 and I was like, I think it was 30 something.
Wow.
So I want to be around for that's one of my key motivations, is being around for my kids,
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So man, I hadn't realized you were into this longevity space. So you're like doing some of the anti-aging stuff, like biohacking as well. Like,
Yes.
All right. Yeah. I got into that a few years ago, myself. The continuous glucose monitor, I tried to convince my doctor to get to prescribe one of these things. And he was like, I can't do that for you.
So yes,
But I think there's companies that are selling them kind of off label now.
They are. As a consumer, you could buy that. Yeah, just to kind of tell you a funny story around that. When in 2007, I was really heavy, 230 pounds. My face was out to here. It was didn't know at the time I was like pre-diabetic, on the verge of diabetes, and then went to go see the doctor, and he's like, "Hey, you're pre-diabetic. We need to put you on this, and this drug. Blah blah blah. Down this path." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to go down this path." It was a wake-up call. And so the doctors are very traditional, that's mindset about how to approach things. And if you've got a hammer, if you got a nail, you got to have a hammer. Well, sometimes you don't need to use the hammer,
Yeah.
You take a different approach. So I've always been a kind of alternative approach. And then so I changed my diet, exercise. And so that kind of reversed that pre-diabetes back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always had that kind of that mindset. But today there is, I think, 3 or 4 different companies. You could just go on the internet, say, I want to continue glucose monitor, ask a bunch of questions. There is a doctor involved. They're giving you kind of prescription, but it's very simple. And for $200 a month, you can have this app and this monitor, and you can measure all sorts of stuff about your body. So.
Yeah, it seems massively valuable, where you're able to like eat something and then immediately see how did my body respond to that. Super interesting, data just to collect. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I've learned a ton here. Anything that you feel like we missed that you might want to share?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground. I think it's like, constantly focus on where you're going, what you're passionate about, what's your higher purpose. Keep asking yourself that question. That'll be kind of the guide,
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so if somebody in your area, so tell us a little about your company so people can find you.
So the company is GO2 Delivery. It's GO2 Delivery.com. And we operate the courier business in Virginia and in 3 different markets. If you want to email me direct, it's eric@go2delivery.com. So
pretty simple. Okay. So go2delivery.com is the website, eric@go2delivery.com. And you're doing courier services in the Virginia area.
Yep. Yeah. Invest in real estate in a couple of different states.
Okay.
Yeah. I have software app that deliver local. It's in, I think, 5 states with restaurants. So.
All right. And that's restaurant delivery.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I appreciate your time today, Eric.
Awesome. Well, good talking to you.
Okay. You too. Thanks.
See you.
Thanks for listening to the Clear Brand Marketing Podcast. If you need help with your website or marketing, go to clearbrand.com. You can schedule a free strategy call with one of our consultants, or take advantage of our free resources to help you write, design, or implement a better website and marketing.